It's your daily dose of Donna. Welcome to the show. Today is Thursday, June 6th, first day of summer break. I'm feeling it. We've got a sunny morning here in Los Angeles. I'm wearing a little dress. I am ready for this gorgeous day tonight. My one son is in a musical, The Little Mermaid, here in Los Angeles. He is a double header, a two-show back-to-back. So I'm going to have to watch the Summer House reunion later than I normally do, but that's okay. And tomorrow, just to give you guys a heads up, I will probably do my show a little earlier than normal, only because I am taking the boys on a staycation, well, not a staycation, a vacation down to San Diego. So we have all these plans for San Diego, going to see a baseball game, going to the zoo, all of the fun stuff. It's a mother-son trip because Lance is on set working out of town. And so we will have a great time. I'm looking forward to that. Shout out to Ray, who's the first member of the YouTube membership subscription that I just announced. And I put it up there today. I finally turned it on so you can also join as a member. And by being a member, you get all these extra special perks here on YouTube. You get member shout outs. You get a badge next to your name. You get members only live streams once a month where I can really give you the dirt. I guess there's some sort of a join button on the page. So check it out. If you have any questions, reach out and make sure to join the Facebook group also, because we have such good conversation in there. Such good conversation. Speaking of such good conversation, I will be releasing my Patreon episode today. Don't you fret, my pets. It's coming out, and lots of the stuff that's coming up in today's episode, we're going to be touching on in a little bit of a deeper, harder but softer, very much like Carl wants his life to be. He wants people to be hard but soft on him. So we'll get into it. We'll get into all of that and more on today's Daily Dose of Donna. It really is the world of podcasting. Podcasting is the thing that what would we do without all these podcasts giving us all of this tea? What I mean by that is two of today's stories really revolve around big I guess exposés on podcasts. A few different things have happened in the last couple of days regarding Captain Lee and Carl. That's one story. And then Billie Lee, in a shocking turn of events, I really enjoyed Billie Lee's podcast talking about Tom Sandoval and his girlfriend. Shout out Wanda Lee, a new member. I will give you guys shout outs if you join as a member. That's the fun part of this. We're just like a group of friends over here. Okay. So the podcast world is really, truly, it's an incredible space because people just feel so much more confident and comfortable on their podcast to share these things. And I love it for us, right? For us, because we're getting an inside scoop on things that I don't think we would know based on an edited TV show or based on articles in, magazines, etc. So it will be really interesting to see kind of how this all turns out, because when someone does go on their podcast to share their version of events, the next person who they're talking about will probably come back. And we're already seeing that with a couple of these. So we'll get into it. But before that, I do want to talk about LOLAVIE. You guys, today was the first day. I just literally jumped out of the shower and I didn't even really have time to blow dry my hair. I just did like a quick, not even with a brush. But I used a really amazing product of LOLAVIE's. It's like I guess it's like a repair treatment and it helps with dry hair. And my hair feels so soft and smells like heaven, because LOLAVIE is hair care with great ingredients, and it's founded by the ever fabulous, ever iconic Jennifer Aniston. And if I am anything, I am team Jennifer Aniston. Do you guys watch The Morning Show, by the way? I have not watched the most recent season, but I love that show. I think I've watched 3 are we on season 4 or 3? I can't remember. But LOLAVIE is sponsoring the show. We always put our hair through the ringer, through coloring, heat styling, stress, aging, and the list goes on. And now we've got the summer elements to battle too. We're talking about the sun, the beach, and the ever present humidity. Jen got tired of the damage and the struggle of having to choose between hair products that work and ones that are actually good for us. So she decided to create what she was looking for. So LOLAVIE is your ultimate summer hair saver. They have the finest natural clinical ingredients, and your hair will feel as luxurious and carefree as a summer breeze. In fact, when I touch my hair right now, I feel like I'm in a summer breeze. Feels so good. And here's a treat for you. For a limited time, you get an exclusive 15% off your entire order at lolavie.com. Just use code Donna, that's DANA, at checkout. I mean, if you're taking hair care advice, why listen to anyone besides the women who gave us the Rachel? So remember, you got to go to LOLAVIE, LOLAVIE.com. As our exclusive listeners, you'll get an exclusive 15% off your entire order when you use the code Donna, that's DANA, at checkout. That's 15% off your order at LOLAVIE.com with promo code Donna. Please support our show and tell them you heard about them from me. Got some new members here. Shout out Nicole Marchand. Shout out Queen Hermit. You guys are awesome. My first 4 members. Just trust me. You're going to get something good. Okay. Now, I'm not saying you're going to get an OnlyFans content, but you may get me with some fans. It's hot. It's hot out there this summer. So just maybe me and OnlyFans. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? All right, we got to get into the stories. And the first story of today is something that is absolutely not shocking to anyone, absolutely at all in the world. And that is Jax Taylor is getting some bad reviews in his bar. Now, if you guys are shocked by this, then I don't know what to tell you. But for some reason, I kind of feel bad about these situations because just like I said many, many times about the Lala Kent, and we'll talk about that more today on Patreon, but Lala got flooded with really, really negative reviews for her podcast because people didn't like her stance in the show and like regarding the show with Ariana and stuff and whatever. Everyone can feel however they want. But then they started going after her podcast and like not only just going after it on their own, but going like I would see a lot of comments on Facebook groups or Instagram accounts or whatever, like, let's flood her with negative comments. That's the best thing you can do is flood her with negative comments. And I think to myself, actually, that is pretty much the lowest possible thing you can do is take someone who's really not doing anything personally to you. They're giving you entertainment. They're giving you a lot of stuff to talk about is really what they're doing. And then you're going to their place of business. You're going to something that actually financially supports them. And you're trying to pull that business away from them. So do I believe in leaving reviews like of honesty? Absolutely. If you really truly find an issue with a restaurant or a podcast or a movie, or I mean, I don't know, what else are we reviewing these days? A book, then sure, go ahead. But don't do it I don't believe in the idea of doing it just to I don't know, if you just do it for like shits and giggles. That I don't like, just because you don't like their personality. Because there's so many people involved in these projects, right? With TV shows, with podcasts, with especially with restaurants. Think about how many people are involved in a restaurant, so many bartenders, bussers, hosts, cooks. So Jax Taylor's bar, Jax's, is flooded with bad reviews for barely edible food, terrible service. So this is via page 6. It says patrons of Jax Taylor's new bar, Jax's Studio City, have been leaving negative reviews about the food and service via Yelp. Since opening the LA-based sports bar in October 2023, the Valley Star has been on the receiving end of plenty of frustrated comments. For example, one person wrote, "Terrible service, waited over 2 hours for food, never got it, but all the sections did. Didn't even receive an apology for the terrible service." That's not good. And then we get, "Everyone was so rude. We were so disappointed. We had left after 10 minutes and will never go back. Definitely need to hire better people to represent your bar. Not a good look. Never had such a horrible experience." Ouch. Absolutely everything sucked from food to staff to space to owner. See, that's where I question things. I will never be returning. Then the final one here says, I hate to leave bad reviews, but I have to be honest. This place was not good. I didn't even have high expectations after word of mouth. The food was barely edible besides the pretzel. Do yourself a favor and stay away from the sliders, the beer cheese, or the nacho cheese. I actually don't think either were cheese. I don't think it's cheese. I mean, do we consider Velveeta actually cheese? I don't know what they're using for their beer cheese, but I imagine it's something along the lines of like some sort of processed cheese, like over processed cheese, right? I wonder really quickly, I wonder if we're dealing with a little bit of a like a smear campaign, almost like Schwartz and Sandy's got after Scandival. Because why is this article coming out right now rather than at the beginning when when the restaurant actually opened? Okay, Michelle is asking, isn't the food coming from a kitchen next door? That's what I heard. Rocco's. Yeah, I mean, I think it has a different. So, you guys, I've talked about this so many times, and I don't even know what's like holding me back. But I haven't been to Jax's, and it's walking distance from my house. I, my birthday's on Tuesday, and my girlfriends want to go out to dinner. And they were saying, like, where should we go? And we were kind of naming off places. And one of them joked and said, Jax's? And I was thinking to myself, gross. No, but now almost think, like, should we go for one drink? The problem is it's a Tuesday, but it's past the valley and Vanderpump Rules. So it's probably going to be a dead. But maybe it's worth for one drink just to say happy birthday. Now, I I do believe that I can't help it, but every time I think of Jax's, I think of my wallpaper. I feel like we have the same wallpaper. Do you guys feel the same way? Like, I feel like the wallpaper in my YouTube is the succulent wall that Brittany put in. I know that a bunch of different podcasters have been there. I know Ryan Bailey has been there. I know that Kiki Monique from Talk of Shame has been there. I want to say Zach Peter has been there. I think a lot of people have been there, and I've never heard anyone leave Jax's and be like, "Oh my goodness, that was phenomenal." I think you actually go to Jax's just for the kind of like the Jax Taylor of it. I don't think you go for the food. Now, Rocco's, which is next door, and Rocco's also has a second location here in Los Angeles. It probably has more, I don't know, in West Hollywood. And it's right at the corner. It's like really close to Tom Tom. It's at the corner of Robertson and San Vicente. Funny enough, not Robertson, sorry, Santa Monica and San Vicente. Funny enough, this is exactly the corner where Ariana and Tom got into it the night of Scandival, the night that she found the pictures or the video on the phone. They went into the alley, which was behind Tom Tom, and then they ran out towards San Vicente, and that's right behind Rocco's. So it's all very kind of like local and connected. And just recently, I'm catching up on $1 Million Listing this last season before the next season comes out. Phenomenal show. When I tell you it's such a good show, I love $1 Million Listing. Like, I want to do a deep dive on the show. I'm obsessed. But this last episode that I watched a few episodes ago, Tracy Tudor, Josh Flagg, and Josh Altman go and sit at Rocco's, and they're talking about how amazing the food is, and they're pounding the pizza and the chicken wings and this and this and that. So I thought to myself, like, I don't exactly know if the food is coming from Rocco's, it's a different menu. But I do believe they share a kitchen. I just don't know if it's specifically new chefs. Welcome, Maddie G, new member. Thank you for being here. Okay, so anyway, Jax Taylor is getting flooded with bad reviews. I would totally go with an open mind. I just feel like you can't go with the intention of eating good food. You just go with the intention of eating, right? Of just eating. Like, just if you need some sustenance. Okay, let's move on to our next story. I think we'll stick with the kind of Vanderpump Valley world and move on to this crazy, crazy interview that happened last night, that was released last night on YouTube and on podcasts. And this is from Billie Lee. So Billie Lee is, as you guys know, if you watch Vanderpump Rules, Billie Lee has been, a huge part of that show for as long as, I mean, for years. And she used to be a cast member. She used to work at SUR. And since Scandival, she really kind of shined as one of Sandoval's, really close friends. She was one of the people that really didn't desert him, where so many people did. It was her and Kyle Chan and, Tom Schwartz were pretty much people that stuck by him that we saw. And I think a lot of us judged her, to be 100% honest. I think a lot of us judged her and felt like she was maybe necessarily like it's just not a very good look. It didn't feel like a very good look that she was hanging out with him, even though she was being a really good friend to him when he was so disgustingly hated. It just probably, listen, she really did, I think, put her reputation on the line by publicly being his friend in those early days. And I think what happened was there was a little bit of a fallout in the most recent of months. We did know she was on the finale, right? When they taped the finale last year over in San Francisco. She was there at that finale party. Now, more recently, Tom Sandoval, I want to say it was around like almost at the finale of Vanderpump Rules, so probably a month ago or so. Tom Sandoval was in the um was at Watch What Happens Live, and Victoria, his girlfriend, happened to be in the audience. Do you guys remember this? And he shouted her out and she looked happy and smiley, but we found it so weird because the next day we noticed that Billie Lee had unfollowed Tom Sandoval and Victoria had unfollowed Tom Sandoval. And we thought to ourselves, or I think maybe Tom Sandoval also unfollowed Victoria. It was kind of crazy. So immediately we're thinking something must have happened. And then a few hours later, Victoria and Tom Sandoval followed each other. All was good there. But Billie Lee never did again. And she finally released a podcast last night where she kind of went into detail with her guest, which happened to be, and I don't say this lightly. I say this like really genuinely. The most annoying guest in the history of all podcast guests, from top to bottom, without a doubt, no questions asked, like that's it, is Joe Wemberg. And let me just tell you, Joe Wemberg should be barred from ever doing a podcast again after she guest starred on this podcast, because when I tell you, nothing is more annoying when someone is actually telling a story that is truthfully like a good tea. Like we were getting a story out of Billie Lee, and Joe popped in every 0.2 seconds. Yeah, yeah. And then, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, good. Yeah, yeah. It's giving Jodie Sweetin on Jeff Lewis. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's actually what it reminds me of, one of the other times someone really annoyed me more than ever before. Remember that episode of Jeff Lewis? This will go down in history as that episode when Jeff Lewis flipped out on Heather McDonald. It was after I want to say it was like after Labor Day weekend. And he came in and he lost it on her. And that was the day he brought up the infamous earring. If you guys don't know, right? He talked about the Justin Martindale and the earring and Heather McDonald and Chris Alamis and and it was crazy. And this episode, we all listened. If you're a Jeff Lewis fan, we listened with mouth open, like jaw dropping. And he had on that episode, I can't even remember her name. She was she's like the director, an actress. She's on there every once in a while, and I cannot remember her name, but she is not very interesting to me. I find her kind of boring. And she kept interrupting Jeff Lewis during this moment that we all just were sitting there waiting for him to talk. And I don't know if there's ever been a time I was ever more annoyed listening to a live interview. Liz Rome, thank you. Liz Rome, Elizabeth Rome. Nothing has ever annoyed me until I listened to Joe Wemberg. So, Joe, you win for the worst podcast guest of all time. Do you not believe me? Let's play the tape. Now, luckily, I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to talk about all the things that came out, but luckily I have such incredible different podcast Instagram Instagram content creators who clip these things and share them for us so we don't have to listen. I don't know if this is specifically the clip, but we have to listen to one little clip because I'm sure there's no way that we're not going to hear Joe jumping on in and getting her annoying voice to completely like distract. But here we go. This is Bywig Hello Drama. Maybe we'll hear it on this one.
Fucking got
Oh,
me.
I know exactly what you're gonna say.
No, this is what really got me.
This is.
I have been always
This
so.
pisses me off.
I've been so curious of Ariana's belongings because Ariana's
Yes.
the ex-girlfriend. She's in the
You've
house.
never. Yes.
Well, all her stuff's in the house. It's still her house.
Yes.
I have.
Also, you didn't live there. You're hanging out.
I didn't live there.
Shut up.
But I always made sure
You
her plans
always
were
would-
taken care of. I
yes,
made sure
you
like
always-
all her stuff was
And
taken
you were
care
like,
of.
Ariana, like, in case you need me to like, and she'd be like, yes, great.
Yes.
Yes. You're also not stupid enough to fuck Tom Sandoval,
Right.
just in general.
Yes, thank you. No, so Victoria demands that Tom move out of the guest bedroom into the master bedroom and get rid of Ariana's stuff. And I'm like,
Oh, Joe
you
Silent.
shouldn't touch Ariana's stuff. Like, she's in New York. Maybe you should come here. Maybe she should come here and get her stuff. Apparently, he called Logan and was like, can you come and put her stuff? Like, you know how
I
her
did not
room
know
was
this.
packed with stuff. Like,
Joe, I can't even do it anymore. I literally, I was like, is there an option where you can mute one of the 4 mics? There was also like some sound issues. I was listening to it, and her co-host, Billie and her co-host, like their sound was so off that every time one of them talked, my eardrums were like, it was a tough listen. But Vanderpod recaps, my girl Vanderpod recaps, fellow doser, she came in with the kills. So let's talk about things that came out on this episode. Why Billie is no longer friends with Tom Sandoval. So Billie basically is saying this. She says, I gave up a lot for Tom. I lost a lot of friends and I was there for them as much as I could be, and I have no regrets. I 100% love that I was there to help a friend out. The thing is, Tom was sober for a very long time. When he met Victoria, he started drinking again. And I noticed a lot of alarming things, especially like how the house was a mess all the time, which it was a mess, by the way. Like, to be clear, we all know this. It was a mess way before, but okay. Then Billie continues, there was drug. I love how the recap, seriously, bless you, Vanderpod recaps on Instagram. Go to Vanderpod recaps. Bless you for not putting Joe's voice in here or like Joe's words, because like it's so much easier to read. Billie says, there was drugs laying around everywhere. It was just a very darker time. He literally was like just always depressed. They were fighting all the time. I would get dragged into the fights, and I had Tom on my podcast. She sent me flowers. She showered me with gifts. She would FaceTime me all the time, like she was one of my close friends. And then Tom and I were like, we didn't really hang out a lot one-on-one, which was fine with me. I'm so happy that they're together. So Tom was like really trying to get me. I was actually going to your house, but Tom was like, come over, I'll order food. And I was like, no, I'm not. I'm going to Sammy's. And he's like, all the likes are killing me. And he's like, I already ordered your favorite food. Let's watch a movie. And I was like, okay, I haven't spent a long time with him in a while. I'll go. So we're eating, we're watching a movie, just regular shit. And she kept calling and calling and calling. And so we had to go upstairs. They got into a fight. He came downstairs and he said, she thinks that we're going to sleep together tonight. And I'm like, what? Literally, this girl is acting like she's my best friend. And so Tom was like, anyway, my whole thing is anyone, so she basically is saying anyone, okay, so Billie is saying that anyone dating Tom has to be somewhat thirsty and a little desperate. I guess she would call Billie Lee, kind of slurring her words and saying, I need to break up with Tom. And Billie would say, why would you call his best friend and say you have to break up with him? And then she would proceed to tell Josh, who's his cousin and assistant, that she's embarrassed to be with him. She can't bring him to parties. She's used to being with A-list celebrities. Weird. So Billie said she was making my best friend out to be like a piece of shit. And then, okay, another time she said, she was accusing Tom and I of sleeping together, and that really hurt my feelings. And then I told him I don't feel comfortable being alone with him. The second time we were alone together, Tom and I went and got our nails done. Shocker. She was calling and calling and calling. We get in the car, and as soon as she answers, he's like, she starts yelling at him, and he says, "You're on speaker, Billie's in the car." And then the third time they were fighting and Tom asked me to come over, it was late, and I said, "Okay, I'll come over." She wasn't there. He needed me. So I went in there. The fighting is constant. I'm telling you, it's the most toxic relationship I've ever seen in my life. I literally would cry. So I went there to be with him because he was fighting with her. He was really upset. I was just chilling on the couch. All of a sudden, she busted in the house. She was parked and watched me come in and started screaming and yelling at him. And we were doing something wrong when I was just sitting there. I got uncomfortable. I walked out. Her car was parked behind me and the door was open and the car was on. Like she literally jumped out of the car and ran inside like she was going to catch us doing something. Anyway, Billie Lee gets Victoria to move her car. She leaves. And then Tom calls her again, apologizing. "Please, Billie, please come back." Billie says, "I feel really uncomfortable. I don't think I should." He was begging her to come back. And Billie Lee felt so bad for him. So she turns around, goes back. And the second she's back in the house, Victoria busts in again. She says, "I'm not joking you. It was crazy. It was so awkward." So obviously, there's like some really toxic stuff here. I guess there was also the story that she claims, and I believe Billie Lee 100% on this one, that she claims that Victoria really didn't like that Ariana had the master bedroom, even though all her stuff was there, and she wanted Tom to move into the master bedroom and get all of her stuff out and go in. But I think at the end of the day, Billie felt like I can't stand by this and I can't kind of be his friend anymore. So, guys, I know that like you reap what you sow. And I know Tom Sandoval essentially, it feels like kind of brought this all this toxicity and all this awful stuff. But this is really, really bad. And it does sound to me like Tom needs help. Now, she did mention also that Tom had a major, like he kept missing meetings. He would sleep until 5 p.m. with Victoria. She did mention there was drugs everywhere. She mentioned he was drinking again. I don't think it takes a detective to kind of infer from this podcast that she definitely has, she's basically alluding to the fact that he is he's got an addiction or something. Something's going on, that he always says he's sick. And as we know from that Nick Viall podcast, that he showed up late too. You guys remember that when he and Tom Schwartz were on it. And this was done a few months ago. And we thought at this point that maybe Tom was a changed man and he was going to learn his lesson and be better. But yeah, I think Victoria is a bad influence on Tom, like Billie says in the comments. And uh, I feel like Tom Sandoval is probably at a really vulnerable state in his life. If I were to like question anything, it makes me think that Tom Sandoval is probably in a pretty vulnerable state and needs really badly to have someone love him. I think that he's not used to being single. He's never been single. Think about that. Like he's really never been single since we've known him. He went directly from Kristen to Ariana to Rachel to Victoria now. And I mean, he was single for just a second, but he was like hooking up the entire time. And I just feel bad for him a little bit. Not because I don't think he deserves it or he's done this to himself. I think he has, but like, just it sounds so depressing and so lame. And I'm going to go a little deeper into that later on Patreon, just from stories of people that I know that have worked with Tom and things I've been like holding on to. I haven't said out loud, but this totally aligns with everything I've heard. So not good. Not good. Joe, never speak on a podcast again, though. Literally never speak on a podcast again. If Joe Wemberg is a guest on a podcast, I will purposely not listen to it. I can't do it. My eardrums cannot take it. Cannot take it. All right. We're going to move on to the story of Captain Lee and Carl, which I can't get over. So shout out to Michelle Martinez Logden, who's a very, very solid doser. She's been around. She's been here for a long time, and she always gives me good insight. And I woke up this morning to a DM from her about this story. And I'm so glad because, I am so insanely invested in Summer House. Like, that's the show for me. And the whole Carl and Lindsay dynamic has been so interesting to me, and hearing all the podcasts and stuff. So this Captain Lee story really blew me away. Captain Lee, I think it's Rossback. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. I don't know. I don't think it really matters because he's just Captain Lee, right? Captain Lee from Below Deck, from multiple seasons. We know him. If you watch the show and if you've seen him on, interviews on Watch What Happens Live, this is a stand-up dude. Okay. I don't think a lot of people can watch or hear about Captain Lee and not think that he's a stand-up dude. I think he's like in his 70s. He's gone through a very, very challenging life. He's been on 10 seasons of Below Deck. So we've really been able to see his personality shine. I think when you watch these captains or these stars on reality shows, especially on Below Deck, which is like the most unproduced show I think out there, because they're really dealing with like actual real problems. I don't think you have to produce crap on that show. I think, there's issues with the guests, and that's just natural. There's issues with the service, natural. There's issues with not having enough red wine, etc., and weather issues. So I just love how it really feels like organic reality TV. So these two were brought together. Captain Lee and Carl Radke were brought together after losing loved ones due to addiction. Captain Lee's son, Josh, died at age 42 in 2019 because of addiction. And then when Carl's brother, Curtis, died in 2020 from an accidental drug overdose, Captain Lee reached out to him. And they became more than friends. I almost think Captain Lee became a little bit of a mentor for him. Captain Lee or Carl recalled on a Watch What Happens Live in February 2021. He says, we share kind of a similar story. Having someone else from the Bravo family reach out meant a lot, especially Captain Lee, who he's a legend. And then also he's a male figure. I think coming from him, it was super important. So they remained in each other's lives. And the captain was even asked, you guys, to be the officiant at the wedding. Okay. The wedding between Carl and Lindsay. So that's how close they were. Kyle Cook was just the flower boy. Don't forget that. So even when Carl ended the engagement, Captain Lee publicly defended his friend and Lindsay and said, he told Us Weekly at BravoCon in November 2023. He said, it kind of upset me that people in a situation like this actually take sides because there's obviously no winners here. There's just both parties losing. So to sit there and go, I'm Team Carl or I'm Team Lindsay, like, why are you going to be that way? They have things obviously to work out, leave them alone and let them work on what they need to work on. So obviously he's like a stand-up dude. He doesn't want to get in the drama. He doesn't want to get into any of this. Okay. Just so you know, like they were really, really close through 2020, 2021, 2022. And in 2023, in 2022, Carl credited Captain Lee during an episode of Watch What Happens Live for laying the groundwork to make him feel confident about starting a relationship with Lindsay. He referred to Lee as a father figure in March 2022. He praised Lee in November 2022, saying, I'm forever grateful for the time you reached out to me at such a pivotal moment in my sobriety and grief process. As you know, losing a loved one is really hard. Thank you for your kindness, warmth, strength, and guidance. I'm so fortunate to have you as my friend. And Captain Lee replied, saying, Carl, you, my friend, have done all the heavy lifting. It has been an honor to call you my friend and a privilege to be able to help where and whenever I can. Believe me when I tell you, I get back much more than I give. Thank you, sir. Like my heart, right? My heart. In honor of, okay. So in 2023, Carl did like an appearance in honor of Captain Lee's 10-year anniversary on Bravo. And then they obviously became, they spoke about it. So now this is wild. In 2023, and I remember this kind of briefly, and then I'd never really thought about it. In November 2023 was BravoCon. Carl did Captain Lee's podcast in person. Captain Lee, they said they recorded it. Captain Lee says he recorded it on a Monday. Then on Tuesday, they released a teaser, which you do for podcasts. Okay. And Captain Lee's podcast is a business for him. So when you take time out of your day and you interview someone and then you release a teaser and you get a lot of people excited and you know that your podcast is probably going to get crazy amazing numbers because this is why you do these podcasts. Hello. In that moment, basically what happened was, well, I think I'll just play it for you because I took the clip and I posted it on my Instagram at This Is Donna Bowling if you're not following me. And here we go.
See, I'm gonna say something about that because I gave Carl and I used to be close, and I gave Carl an opportunity to be on the podcast and tell it as he saw it.
Right.
There was if there was a question he wanted taken off, we took it off.
Mhm.
There was something he didn't want to answer, we didn't put him on the spot. We didn't hang him out to dry. It was a softball interview, if I've ever seen one, because I would never have done something intentionally to put Carl on the spot.
He was a good
But
friend.
After what's been coming out in the last week, all of the confessionals that I've been reading about, and we were gonna air the podcast. Let's see, we did it on a Monday,
Mhm.
and normally what we do is we launch a tease on Tuesday of who we're going to have on the podcast, which we did.
Because we were actually at BravoCon in Vegas when we recorded that.
We were at BravoCon,
Yeah.
and then I got a phone call from Carl, and he just went off how I was taking advantage of him and, trying to put him on the spot. And his media person was there, his publicist was there, as was mine. You were there.
I was there.
And I was blown away. I don't know what made him go off the way he went off or why he thought what he was thinking, of which I really don't have a clue as to what he was thinking.
It's
The conversation
very
didn't
odd.
last. I mean, I told him, you don't want it aired? Fine. No problem. We won't air it.
It just put us in a really difficult position as well. And I don't think he really cared about that.
Well, I
It's
don't
a
know what he
business.
cared about, but I'm to the point where, after all the things that are coming out now, we didn't air it because he asked us not to, or should I say demanded that we didn't air it. And how could we just hang him out to dry like that? And we didn't. I'd like for a listener to come forward and say, yeah, how could you do that to Carl? Because we never aired anything about Carl. And we never had a discussion about Carl before now.
Correct.
And the only reason we're having it now is because just some of the stuff that I'm reading, and I don't believe everything that I read, but I do believe some of the stuff that I see.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the behavior tracks. I mean, we were definitely blindsided, a little thrown off by
Carl likes to
his
blindside people.
reaction after when we were trying to get ready to post it. He was well aware of the conversation. It didn't paint, Lindsay in a bad light. It didn't paint him in a bad light. It actually was, I would say, complimentary in that time when it was a very sensitive timing.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a Jekyll and Hyde. Like he came out of left field, and
Well, he got the best possible interview from anybody that he was ever going to get. And I gave him the opportunity to tell his story from his viewpoint, and he could say what he wanted to say. He did not have to say anything he felt uncomfortable with.
but that behavior, his reaction tracks a little bit more with these articles that are coming out. They're just erratic.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, he ended up hanging up on me after
He
accusing
hung
me
up on him.
of deceiving him. So, Mr. Radke, you were never deceived by me.
No, I would say your character is definitely not one to be tested because it will stand the test of time. And right now, I think with the show airing and people are seeing all different sides of it, of course, there's 3 sides to everything: her side, his side, and the truth in between. The show may be airing in a particular viewpoint, but I don't think it can change the narrative, and I don't think it can change how he reacts and how she reacts
Yep.
and how everything went down.
Well, I wanted to have my say about this for a while because it's just been one of those things that's been under my skin and bothering me.
Yeah.
And I'm only one to let something like that bother me for so long before
I feel
I'm
so
gonna say
bad for
something about
Captain
it.
Lee in this moment.
After watching this season of Summer House, I don't think certain people were entirely honest with me.
Okay. And obviously there's more to it, although I pretty much got the gist of it, but you guys should listen to the entire chunk. It's on the Salty pod. I think it's called Salty with Captain Lee. Okay. Here's my thought. And I'm reading your guys' comments, and I'm always so invested and interested in what you guys have to say too, because everyone has a standpoint and a perspective when it comes to someone with addiction. Obviously, a lot of you guys are dealing with it with your own selves. A lot of you have parents, brothers, sisters, friends. Okay. I think this is very telling for a man like Captain Lee and in his status, in his place in his life, for him to come on a podcast, his podcast, obviously, to explain a falling out that none of us really understood. See, I wasn't really following Carl and Captain Lee's friendship, so I never sat there and thought, like, why aren't they friends anymore? But I do kind of remember briefly wondering why the podcast didn't air. The fact, and I think what I attributed it to was maybe a Bravo moment where Bravo was like, no, we don't want him being on a podcast. But it's clearly not the case. And if you are someone that is in like a podcasting space or in an interviewing space, whether it's on, TV, podcasts, a few different things happen when you're interviewing like someone of a stature. Number one, you talk to them before usually and say, hey, we're not going live. I want you to be comfortable. So if you're really uncomfortable with any of the questions, like let me know and I'll remove some of these. Like we can edit things out. And I've had to do that in the past with interviews that I've done that are not live. For Carl to say, hey, I really didn't like this one. Like if he did the interview with his friend, remember his friend, his mentor, and his potential efficient. Okay. Meaning he loved him that much and he appreciated and respected him that much. If he did that interview and did actually feel deceived at the end of it, did actually feel like Captain Lee didn't have a positive intention, did he actually feel that way? Fine. If he went home that night and slept on it and was like, I am freaking the F out over what's going to happen in this podcast. What you do is you call your friend and you say, hey, I need to explain something to you. I'm losing my mind right now. I have not slept all night. I am freaking out that I said A, B, and C, and it's going to be, misconstrued and it's going to make me look bad. And I really don't want to look bad. And I think Captain Lee would have said, no problem. Let's remove that. And let's listen back to it together. But for Carl, and it sounds like it was the approach that he called Captain Lee with his PR person on the phone the day after and said, how dare you deceive me? I feel like you completely went behind my back, tried to make me look bad, and I don't want it aired, and hung up on him. And Captain Lee said, I didn't fight him back. Like I told him I wouldn't air it. But it was the way that he did it with no respect whatsoever in the fact that this is a business. And like Captain Lee's not actually saying this is a business, but we all know if you're in this podcast space and you have a huge, huge to get Carl on an interview in November of 2023 was such a big deal. It would have been a huge thing for Captain Lee. And it would have done such a, to me, it would have done Carl a solid. I think Captain Lee would have really come at him in a very kind and loving and nurturing way and wouldn't have been like, what's wrong with you, Carl? I don't think he would have done that. I think he would have been a very, very kind, nice, like he said, he threw him a softball interview. So the question is, what's going on with Carl? What is going on with Carl? A lot of you guys are coming to the conclusion of what we've talked about on the show a few times about Carl, this idea of a dry drunk. A dry drunk is someone technically, and I learned this through you guys, so I'm actually getting education here too, is someone who has bad behavior because of the addiction, right? Alcoholism, etc. And then when they remove the substance, the behavior still stays the same, meaning it wasn't because of the substance that their personality came out in this horrible way. Their personality was always there, but the substance maybe enhanced it or just created a different version of it. In my opinion, I do see moments of that with Carl. I don't see the anger as much. We don't see it on the TV show, at least, but we've heard from Lindsay that it's there. We don't see the anger as much as maybe we did. But if you go back, like I said, season 4 is such a prime Carl example of Carl Carling out, right? Carl was such a dick in season 4 of Summer House to Jules, to Lindsay, to all the girls, really, and just in general. Like, that was the season where he finally got kind of a kick in the pants about partying too much. This was the moment where he, you know, where he went to, what's it called? Kyle called Carl out in season 4 because Loverboy was just taking off and they were starting to get it into stores, and Carl was doing all that work with Kyle, going to all the appearances. And Kyle says in this episode on season 4, I'm a little concerned. He talks to Lindsay about it. I'm concerned about Carl. We had a happy hour event with investors, with meetings, whatever, with business partners and potential people. And Carl showed up hammered, like he's partying too much. And Carl straight up says in this season, I think I'm like relying on drinking too much. I'm relying on drinking too much. So this was the season, I think, where things started to kind of come to a head with Carl. This was before his brother even passed away. To me, a lot of you guys are also, another thing that a lot of you are saying is his physical appearance. I think it would be insane to not mention this as part of what we're seeing. Carl has gone from looking, let me see if I can find, oh, sorry, 1 second. Let me see if I can find a picture of Carl in 2000, like 18 versus where, the goldfish picture. Carl images. Okay. This is a serious, like, I'm not joking. And this is when he was drinking. And usually when you're partying and when you're drinking, you look unhealthy, right? Because you're like partying your ass off. This is Carl Radke in 2018, before he became, 2017, before he became sober. He's a very, very handsome man by all accounts. I mean, he looks healthy. He looks happy. He looks like he has life in his face. And this is when he was partying. And now when you go into, how Carl Radke looks now, I mean, we've all seen the goldfish picture, and there's something about his face that looks very unhealthy to me. And I can't really necessarily like call it anything specific, but he has lost a ton of weight. Okay. He has lost so much weight. He almost looks like a different person. His teeth, obviously, we know he's done his teeth. He doesn't look, he looks gaunt. That's a great word. He looks gaunt. And when Scott Disick from the Kardashians was out and about looking like this, gaunt beyond, right? Like his eyes are sunken in, his cheeks, when Scott Disick was walking around, like the world was talking about it. And no one's really talking about Carl. But to me, I mean, he looks better in this picture, to be honest. When was this picture? He looks so much better in this picture with Jesse. Like he looks like a different person almost. Maybe he's gained weight since this goldfish ad. But like, he doesn't look good. He looks too skinny. Now, I'm not saying that could be like 100% attributed to any sort of substance. I don't want to say that. I mean, who knows? It just doesn't look good. It doesn't look healthy to me. He also has his own inner, turmoil. He's very, 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 very concerned about pleasing people. He said it himself. I didn't make that up. His biggest concern in life is making sure people around him are happy with him. I think he lives his life to please his mom. I think he lives his life to please the fans and the world. And that's why so soon after the breakup, he immediately was concerned with how he was being perceived in the world. Do people think I'm like Sandoval? He literally said it within minutes of breaking up with his fiance. Within minutes of calling off a wedding, he spoke to his producers in the kitchen, threw Lindsay under the bus, saying she's going to act blindsided. She's going to act this way. She's going to act that way, making her sound like she's the crazy one. And he said, and people are going to think I'm like Tom Sandoval. He was so concerned with that in the beginning. And in fact, Lindsay was just on Not Skinny But Not Fat, the podcast, and she mentioned that he called her like the days after, right after he broke up with her, to go to couples therapy. I think he started to panic. What is the world going to think of me? Because people were starting to turn on Carl right after we found out. Do you guys remember that? The second we found out that Carl had called the cameras back to break up with Lindsay, immediately the press and all the bloggers and the Instagram accounts, we were all like, what the F? That is so insane. That's actually so effed up to do to Lindsay. And I think he started to spiral because he didn't want in any capacity. That's why he brought the cameras in. He didn't want to look bad. He wanted people to see the truth, what really happened in that conversation. But it backfired. I think it backfired on him. And so he lives his life for people to like him. And when you do that, you can't live honestly, because part of being a human being, especially if you're in the public, but just even anyone, is knowing that not everyone's going to like you. And you can't live your life for everyone to like you, or else you're living a shell of who you are. You're not yourself. And I think Carl is in that world. I think he doesn't know who he is. I think he doesn't know who he should be. I don't think he knows how to live and what choices to make. I think he second guesses every single thing he does. I think he questions every single thing he does. I don't think he knows how to like be firm or whatever. Okay, so a lot of comments. I want to read some of them because I find them always so interesting. So let's kind of like go through. Well, some people are saying in the comments, wait, this is kind of effed up of Captain Lee to do. Captain Lee kind of screwed over Carl by airing this public laundry out, this dirty laundry. I disagree. I think Captain Lee was severely hurt by Carl. It sounds to me like he was. He truly said to Carl in 2020 or 2021, whenever they were, openly talking on Instagram, he said, helping you makes me feel so much better than you would believe. Like I get so much more than I'm giving. I believe Captain Lee lost a son and gained Carl. I think Captain Lee is heartbroken by Carl. Carl fucked Captain Lee over, disappointed him, hurt him, treated him like he was a shitty person, and never once called to apologize since then. That was in November. We're in June. 7 months. And meanwhile, Captain Lee now is seeing all the articles, all the things, the New York Times, whatever that Carl is releasing. And he's like, F you. Seriously, F you. You lied to me about who you were. I think so. I don't think it's a bad thing to do. I think Captain Lee genuinely cares for Carl. And he knows that his words saying this is going to hurt Carl in a way that maybe will wake Carl up to his behavior. Because like Carl's so concerned about everyone liking him. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's actually a helpful thing. I don't think he's straight up saying he's on drugs or he's drinking or whatever, but he's saying it's erratic behavior and it's weird. Okay. Yeah, Chris says calling him out publicly after all this time is probably by design, trying to help him. I'm not going to bring up a lot of things that you guys are assuming maybe about substances, but we are seeing stuff like that. Okay. Beth says my cousin is sober and looks similar to Carl. They are addicts and become addicted to something else, i.e. working out. Listen, Carl has worked out his entire life, like from what we've seen, right? He's always gone to Barry's. He's always worked out on the show. He's always been healthy. So has Kyle Cook. Like the two of them are always working out. This doesn't look like working out. If you're addicted to working out and not eating, maybe it's not like he's looking buff. It's not looking, he used to look like buff. He used to look built. He used to look good. And he just looks skinny. Carl is obviously in crisis. He doesn't know who he is. Mark says what he wants to do is a people pleaser. It's a toxic mix. Okay. And then Michelle says, just because Carl is sober doesn't mean he doesn't get called out for his behavior. Whether he is using or not, he gets treated like everyone else. He was disrespectful first, and Lee is the bad one, basically saying, no, Lee isn't doing anything wrong. Okay. Leslie says Captain Lee could have told this story months ago if he wanted to. He's telling it now because he's concerned. I agree, you guys. I agree. And I think he's really truthfully worried about his friend. You know? So I'm curious if Carl comes back. I think Carl will have to come back and say something. I worry. I really do worry for his I guess his health. This has got to kill him knowing that Captain Lee released this, though. I really hope Carl does reach out to Captain Lee. I really do. I think it would make a really nice ending of this as if they reconnected and Carl explained to Captain Lee what was going on in that day. And now I want to hear that damn podcast, right? Now I want to hear that podcast. What could have been said on that podcast that Captain Lee is like, it was not a bad podcast. Like it hardly did anything. You know, what could have been said that was so bad for Carl? I don't think it was anything he said. I think it was just Carl panicking over it. Anyway, you guys, I love you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing and liking the show, joining as a member. I appreciate you guys so much. And tonight is the Summer House reunion part 1. So I will be watching that and we'll be talking about that. Tomorrow's episode may be a little bit earlier than normal because I will be getting on the road. So I'll give you guys a heads up. Thank you so much and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.